And we will continue with the 12th chapter of Scrub Dog of Alaska by Walt Morey. When Scrub regained consciousness, he was lying on a rug on a floor. A fire was crackling merrily in a stove, and delicious warmth was soaking into his battered body. A man with a steel hook was sitting on a bench and looking at him. When he spoke, the dog's sharp ears came forward. He remembered the voice. "Well, friend," Scotty said, "I never expected to run into you again, much less fish you out of the breakup. Seems like saving your life is getting to be a habit of mine. I had some doubts you'd wake up when I first brought you in. That old river almost got you for sure, but I remember you always was a tough one." Scrub thumped his tail weakly on the floor, but he didn't try to move. "That's it, rest," Scotty said. "You've earned it. You gave that old river as good a battle as I've ever seen. You'd have lost, though, but for me and my hook." He held up his left arm. "For once, it come in handy. I doubt I could have held on to you with a hand in that current. Once I got the hook in that chain, there was no pulling loose." He frowned and asked, "Where'd you leave Smiley Jackson? At the bottom of the river, maybe? Well, he won't be greatly mourned." Scotty was lonesome for talk. Even though his audience was only a dog, it was better than nothing. "I was watching the breakup, and I saw you coming for a couple 100 yards. Thought you was a wolf till you got close and the sun shone on that chain around your neck. Then I knew you had to be a dog. I ran down and waded out and snagged you. Didn't know it was you, though, till I hauled you out." He leaned forward and stroked Scrub's big head. "I'm right glad to see you, friend. You and me," he continued, "we're special. Know why? That old river got me once just like it did you, about 20 years ago that was. Done the same thing you did. Started across the breakup. I lost my team and sled and everything. I got out alone, though. I've seen a lot of animals get caught in the breakup along here. Deer, moose, wolves, foxes, caribou. You and me, I guess we're the only ones got caught in it and lived, friend. I guess in a manner of speaking, that makes us brothers of some kind." Scrub thumped his tail again, and Scotty continued, "You ain't bunged up too bad, considering you got some pretty good bangs from ice chunks. I'd guess you might have a cracked rib or two, but they'll heal in a few days. Mostly you're just bruised, same as I was. About tomorrow, every muscle you got will start screaming when you move. You'll be that sore." Scotty rose. "I'll bet you're hungry. You've had a big day. You've come back and you've lived through the breakup. I'd say that calls for a celebration. And something special, like maybe bacon pancakes. How's that sound to you? I'll bet you ain't had one since the last time you was here." Scrub pounded his tail again, and Scotty nodded. "Bacon pancakes it is. You know they really stick to your ribs. That's what you need a lot of now." Scrub basked in the warmth of the room and listened to the rattle of pots and pans. Finally, the delicious odors of cooking brought him to a sitting position, licking his lips. When Scotty put a pan heaped with potatoes and pancakes before him, the dog dropped his head and dug in. Scotty sat at the table with his own loaded plate and smiled. "That's the stuff, friend," he said. "I like to see a guest enjoy his food." Scrub licked the pan clean and lay back with a gusty sigh. "You figure that'll hold you till morning?" Scotty asked. He poised a bite of pancake on his fork and said thoughtfully, "The way I figure it, you didn't leave Jackson in the river. That busted chain says you're alone, friend. Maybe Jackson sold you, maybe he didn't, but you broke loose from someplace and you're headed back to Aurora because you think Davy's there. I hate to disappoint you, but he's gone and never coming back. There's nothing here for him to come back to. He's with his uncle now. Once the boy gets a taste of city life, he'll never return to the bush. So what happens to you? I've got to think on that." Later, when he was getting ready for bed, Scotty said to the dog, "Don't remember if I told you that I was glad to see you again, but I am. Sort of like having a bit of Davy and his folks again." Scrub spent the night on the rug before the warm stove. In the morning, he found that every muscle had stiffened and he could barely stand. "Like I told you, eh?" Scotty said. "You found you got muscles you didn't know you had. It won't last long. In a couple of days, you'll limber up. Just lay back, relax, and take life easy." Scrub spent the day on the rug, rising stiffly only when Scotty set pans of food before him. Scotty put in the day working over the pile of furs. David and his father Scotty put in the day working over the pile of furs David and his father caught during the winter. The fur buyer will be out in about a week, and I want everything to look shipshape, he explained to Scrub. After that, I've got to repair my sluice boxes and do a little prospecting. Later that evening, Scotty said, "Been giving your case a lot of thought. The thing is, did you run off from Jackson or somebody else? If it was somebody else, he likely wouldn't know where to look for you. Now Jackson might come this way looking for you. I don't want him around here any time for any reason. Guess I've got a little more thinking to do." Again, Scrub spent the night on the rug before the stove. The next morning, when he rose to eat, some of the stiffness was gone. After breakfast, Scrub limped outside. He looked toward the river. It was flowing smooth and free of ice, but great chunks lay melting along the bank where they'd been pushed by the breakup. He lifted his nose to the warm breeze as though reading some message it carried. Satisfied, he stretched out on his side and let the warm morning sun soak into him. Scotty smiled from the open door. "In 2 or 3 days you'll be as good as new, friend. So don't be in a rush to go ramming around. You lay there and soak up that sun. Best medicine in the world." Scotty went back inside and through the open door. The dog heard him moving about. Scrub lay in the sun for some time. Then his head rose, turned toward the south. His sharp ears came forward. Finally, he got stiffly to his feet. Scotty's voice drifted to him from inside the cabin. "Finished my thinking about you, friend. Way I figure it is this. Someplace you've got an owner. Whether he'll ever find you or not, nobody knows. Right now, you're a lost dog. You're heading back to Davy, and he's not there. You're going to be mighty lonesome when you learn that. Now me, I didn't want another dog, but with David gone and his folks all gone, it sure gets lonesome for somebody to talk to. That puts you and me in the same boat. You've got to forget Davy and stay with me. We can make a pretty good team of it." Scrub moved slowly off through the trees. Scotty's voice faded into silence. Scrub could not travel fast, and the first few hours he stopped often to rest. But gradually, stiff, bruised muscles began to limbering up. By late afternoon, he was trotting along, relatively free of pain. He made no more stops to rest. It was early evening. The sun was dropping behind the trees when he came to the spot on the riverbank where David and he had fished and learned to walk again. When he entered the clearing and saw the cabin, he broke into a headlong run. Barking wildly, he dashed up to the closed door and scratched and barked to be let in. He alternately scratched and barked for several minutes. Then he put his nose to the crack at the bottom of the door and sniffed. There was no smell of warmth from within, of cooking or of any life. He circled the cabin, looking for someone. He nosed about the half-used woodpile and the ground around the cabin, searching for some scent. But the winter snow and time had washed it all away. He visited the barren spots where the dog houses stood. There was nothing. He reared against one of the windows and tried to peer inside, but the curtains were drawn. No sounds came to his straining ears. There was something he could not understand. He had lived with the boy in this house. He had known love and affection and family warmth. Now there was an air of desertion about the place, and he could find no trace that anyone had ever been here. He lay down on the porch, his back against the door, to wait. The boy would come. Light faded out of the sky, and darkness folded over the earth. The stars came out. The moon sailed from behind the distant peaks and bathed the clearing and cabin in soft light. In the distance, ducks and geese talked companionably in the river. A rabbit darted across the clearing, pursued by a weasel. An owl called from the edge of timber and was answered from a long way off. Morning brought no one. Scrub stayed close all day, intermittently napping on the porch and wandering about the clearing. His sharp ears were attuned for the slightest noise from within. His delicate nose kept searching for some remembered scent. Once he went to the river for a drink. He stood on the high bank and looked about. Memories stirred faintly within him. Finally, he trotted back to the cabin. He scratched at the door at intervals and barked inquiringly. With evening, he became very hungry. He trotted off toward Aurora. His actions at the settlement were the same as when he was a starving pup. He visited the garbage piles first, but some other animal had picked them clean. He sneaked among the houses, his nose sampling the slight breeze for any scent of food. At the last house, he found a hot dish sitting on the porch. At the last house, he found a hot dish sitting on the porch bench to cool. He slipped it off the porch, reared front paws on the bench, and began bolting the contents of the dish. He was not as cautious as he had been as a pup. He rattled the pan and knocked it from the bench. Steps came toward the door. Scrub whirled and dashed off the porch into the cover of night. A voice yelled angrily, "Get out of here! Beat it!" A woman's voice called. "What'd you see, Henry?" "Couldn't be sure in the dark," the man answered. "Dog of some kind, I think. He got most of your pie. If I didn't know Smiley Jackson was gone, I'd say that scrub dog of his was snooping around." Scrub spent another night on the cabin porch. In the morning, he toured about the place once more. There had never been a sound of movement. He could find no scent that he associated with people living here. This was the right place, yet it was completely strange. There was nothing here to hold him. He trotted across the clearing, stopped at the edge of the woods, and looked back at the cabin. He barked once in a forlorn sort of hope, then turned and disappeared among the trees. He was going to the only friend he had left. He was going back to Scotty. And that's the end of chapter 12.